Hello, hello, hello. There's Dan with his mask.
Oh, can I take my mask off
You
now?
can take your mask off, yes.
In science, we trust. In science, I trust. Science is golden. Science is golden.
Is that
I
what
love
says?
it.
Oh,
There we go.
already starting with the bad jokes. I love it, Dan. Genevieve, how are you? I missed you last week. We missed our show.
I know. I missed you too. I'm doing very well. I've been itching to do this for 2 weeks now. It's so strange.
Yeah, we've been doing a weekly show now for several months, and it felt odd to take a week off. But anyway, we did, and we're back stronger than ever with the one and only Dan Barker. Say hello, Dan.
Hello. Good to see you, Dave and Genevieve.
Good to have you, man. Good to have you on. It's been a couple of years since I saw you. It was almost this time of year, I believe. Early December of 2019.
You were on our national TV show, Freethought Matters. That's right.
Freethought Matters in studio there. I remember it was very cold in Madison, Wisconsin when we were there.
Oh, that time of year. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was great being there, and hope to get back next year and see you. Genevieve, how are you? What's new in your world?
Not a whole lot. I'm petting my dog right now. We're kind of bundled up because it's cold here in Maryland. Not nearly as cold as Wisconsin, but I'm not looking forward to the coming season. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the cold, and I'm sure it's cold there, Dan.
Well, yeah, but we choose to live here, so we just adapt, you know.
But you came from Arizona, if I remember right.
Well, my parents lived in Arizona. I was born and raised in California. So it was quite a change. But I was like, I wanted it when I first came out here in the 80s to Wisconsin, I wanted to see how cold it could get. I wanted to experience it. So I wanted that thermometer to drop. In that first winter, it was like 20 below or 25 below for a whole week, and the wind was blowing. And wow, so I got my taste of the cold. And the snow stops being snow. It's like powder or plastic or something. When it's that cold, it's not really like a wet thing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, when it's cold, you can always put on something else. You can always put on another.
That's true.
But when it's hot, there's only so much you can take off. So
that's what my son lives in New York City. That's what he says too. He'd rather deal with the cold winters than the hot summers. He said this summers are unbearable.
Well, everybody's different.
So how long, Dan, you've been in Madison for a while at Freedom from Religion Foundation with Annie Laurie. When was it that you went there? I can't remember.
Well, so after 19 years, I stopped preaching in 83. And in 84, I joined the Freedom from Religion Foundation. In 85, I moved to Madison, Wisconsin, which is the headquarters of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. So how long is that? 30.
Jeez.
Wow, 36 years now.
That's a lot. I did not know it had been that long.
Yeah, and I love it here. It's a great town. It's very liberal. Dane County is 54% non-religious, if you can believe that. And even all the religious people in town, we all march in the same marches. You know what I mean? It's not like there's this big fundamentalist fight happening in our town.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great place to grow up.
Mm-hmm. It's lovely.
Our daughter grew up here.
Mm-hmm. So, Genevieve, read our phone number for our viewers. It's a call-in show, folks. We invite you to call in.
Yes, I'm glad my eyes are good for something. Yes, it's 217-375-9933. If you want to call in, our lines are open. We'd love to talk to you all.
Yes, and be sure and hit the like and subscribe button on our channel. And if you can, become a Patreon supporter. That's how we're able to keep doing this. It does cost money to put the show on and have the call-in studio. So any kind of support you can offer would be awesome. and we appreciate your support. We appreciate everyone just joining us and being a part of this. So, Dan, there's so many things I want to cover with you tonight. First of all, I know you just came off of I'm going to call it FFRF because it's Freedom from Religion Foundation is just too much for me to say. I get really lazy. You just came off your convention in Boston. Tell us what were the highlights and what are you guys focused on?
This was our 44th annual convention. Last year we had one remote. So this was the first in-person since the pandemic. And I think of all the national secular groups, we were the first to have an in-person convention because it's late enough in the year that we were able to plan it. It's been so iffy.
Right.
And it was a great crowd. It was about 550 people, which is a little smaller than normal, but we were expecting a smaller group because of the pandemic. Everybody was vaccinated and most people wore masks. And there were no low notes of the convention. Margaret Atwood, the author, who's internationally famous, who's an atheist, she gave a great talk. Catherine Stewart, the author of the Good News Club, she interviewed Margaret Atwood about her life, and Margaret was so funny. We were surprised how funny she was. She was just laughing.
Now, what is she most known for? Her book is
well, The Handmaid's Tale.
Okay, you know. Does she think that we're going back there in this country?
Well,
feels like we are.
She wrote that back in the 80s, and it took this long to get, and so she's saying it was almost prophetic, when it came in that. Of course, that movie now is iconic, and she was so relaxed and fun. She's at a point where she has nothing to prove, so she can just say and be whatever she wants and who she wants. And then we had Gloria Steinem, who we've been trying to get for 4 decades.
Wow!
And we finally got her. She was going to come in person, but then the day before she fell and broke or bruised her ribs. She's 87 years old. So for her to travel anyway, especially during the pandemic, was a big deal. Right. So our tech crew, our IT people were able to work it so that she could be remote. And we had her face up on a big screen, and Annie Laurie interviewed Gloria Steinem. And Annie Laurie showed some photographs from 1980 when Annie Laurie was a college student interviewing Gloria Steinem, who had come to town, before she had even written a book. And so she asked her some of the same questions from 1980. She asked them again, which really was a lot of fun. And she showed the photographs. And in fact, Gloria Steinem is a real enabler, a helper, and she helps other groups a lot. And after that interview, Gloria Steinem subscribed to Annie Laurie's newspaper. Annie Laurie had a feminist newspaper. And Annie Laurie's mom said, "You should frame that." And it was $7.50. And Annie Laurie said, "But I need the money." So she photocopied it, and she was able to show the photocopy of Gloria Steinem's check for joining.
Oh, my goodness. That was
just a great, and they talked a lot about religion, and that'll be online. We'll put it in our newspaper.
Yeah.
Steven Pinker, the biologist and the author, he spoke about his new book, Rationality, which was really, really strong. David Tamayo with Hispanic American Freethinkers, Sikivu Hutchinson with Black Skeptics Los Angeles. We had a couple from Puerto Rico that was there as well. And Phil Zuckerman, if you know Phil Zuckerman, the sociologist and author, he was there. He was a lot of fun. And then on Saturday night, Andrienne, who is Carl Sagan's widow, she and her daughter, their daughter, Sasha Sagan, they both gave some talks. Wow. And I got to introduce it by singing a natural love song, because Andrienne and Carl Sagan had this, not only a great collaboration, but they had just a great romance too. And of course, he died in 1996, way too young.
Yes.
But now the kids are grown, and now Sasha is an author, and now she's got a great book out about ritual. And so that was really fun, seeing the two of them talk and give their stories and answer questions from the audience. So we just had a great time. Well,
I wanted to ask you, I see a great question in the chat, but I wanted to ask you about the FFRF. And if you can give our viewers, I know most people know what you guys are and what you guys do, but have you seen significant increase in FFRF donations and membership since the Trump cult, and what has been happening in the last 6 years or so? This move toward Christian nationalism, but what is essentially the role or the goal of FFRF, and how do you go about what you do for the most part?
Well, sadly, our membership increased with Trump. That's kind of a hard way to grow your membership, is to endure something like that.
Yeah.
We started, the group started in 76 locally, and in 78 became a national organization with two purposes: to keep state and church separate, and to educate the public about the views of non-theists.
Mm-hmm.
And we like the word free thinkers. So even though most of our members are atheists, we're not an atheist organization. We have agnostics and secular humanists and deists, and some Buddhists join. You don't have to call yourself an atheist to belong to FFRF, although I think about 85% would call themselves atheists. What we like to say is it doesn't matter what we call ourselves. We all disbelieve in the same God. So
Yeah, that's
and
true.
so with the first purpose, to keep state and church separate, we do a lot of legal work. We have 10 full-time attorneys on our staff and a legal staff beyond that. We file lawsuits at every level of government. We always have 6 or 8 or 12 or sometimes even 15 cases in the courts at any time at different levels, because they get appealed in that. We sued the governor of Texas, and we're winning on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then our legal staff also corrects state church violations by writing letters. They send out thousands of letters every year from people like you who call in and say, "Hey, they're praying in my kid's 5th grade classroom. What can I do about that?" So we can send a letter to that principal and to the teacher and get them to stop that. Or the coach of my kid's high school football team had a baptism right after practice. What do we do about that? And in the South, that's happening a lot. You can imagine. We write letters to postmasters and to governors and to mayors and to wherever there's a violation, we can try to correct it. And we get hundreds of victories without going to court, which is pretty neat.
Right.
Because going to court is expensive and time consuming. And if you can stop a violation by simply writing a letter to the school superintendent or whoever and say, "By the way, this has already been decided by the courts that what you're doing is illegal, and you need to stop it. You need to respect the freedom of those students of yours who are not religious, if you want to respect religious freedom." So we go to bat for the non-religious in the courts. And for our second purpose, we have a radio show, a TV show, a monthly newspaper. We publish books. We do speaking, we do debates, and we do just a lot of things to try to educate the public about what non-believers are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's funny. I still remember the first time I ever heard of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and it was when I was at a friend's house, and Fox News was on, because it never would have been, on at my house. And it cuts to commercial, and I see Ronald Reagan Jr. and he's promoting the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and it's I think it was maybe during Tucker Carlson even, and I just remember thinking like, wow. That is amazing. These guys are ballsy. Like, I just have to say, like, fantastic PR campaign with that one. It was really exciting to see that, and hopefully see that it would reach people that are maybe stuck in this sort of conservative, right-wing, evangelical bubble.
Well, that's really good to hear, Genevieve, because we've never even asked Fox News to carry our ad. And as far as I know, they never have, but maybe they run it as a, you know what I mean? This is what's horrible that's happening. That line that Ron Reagan says at the end, Ron Reagan, lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell.
Yeah, it was really just so bizarre. I was like, who greenlit this on this network? Because I couldn't believe it myself.
So to the average person who's hearing this and seeing this, the average person being, let's say, my family members, or maybe yours, Dan, or people that we know who are just good Christian folk, and they see the work you guys do. And I know people get mad about it. These angry atheists are trying to come into our school zone and tell us what we can't do, and telling us that we can't pray. They're trying to take prayer out of the schools. They're trying to take the word of God out of this country. What's wrong with a coach praying with his team, Dan? What's wrong with a teacher leading her kids in prayer? What's so bad about that, Dan?
Well, what you can say to those people is they would immediately see what's wrong if it was someone else's religion. If it was an atheistic coach or a Muslim teacher or a Wiccan priestess coming into the classroom to push someone else's religion on their kids, the public schools need to be neutral, and the public schools need to allow religious freedom among the people. And the government, which is the teachers and the principal and the superintendent, they need to back off and not get involved in pushing or hindering religion. We would be just as concerned if there was an atheist teacher, also trying to impose their views on students. So what we are fighting for is true religious freedom. We're not barging into their churches. We're not grabbing them by the collar and saying, how can you be so stupid to believe in talking snakes and Adam? We're not doing that. Although some of our books say those things. We're not trying to interfere with those people. We don't sue them. What we do is we sue the government. So when the government crosses the line at any level, well, then that's the complaint that we make. So the government needs to cross its arms and just back off and let us believe what we want. Let the Christians believe and have their prayers and go to church and advertise their faith as in a free country like this. But let the non-believers too. There are a lot of non-Christian and non-believing students in those classrooms. And do my friends and do your relatives really want the school to be interfering with our beliefs or with anybody's religious freedom? The school should not be interfering. They should back off. And I said that to Tucker Carlson once. I was on his show. We complained about kindergarten where the teachers were having Bible study with the students right after class.
Right.
And he got all huffy like, so do you feel good about yourself, Mr. Parker, that you're stopping little children from having some prayer and Bible study? And I said, yeah. But yeah,
actually I do.
Actually,
Kind of the point.
Those kids can have that in their church and in their home. And they have every freedom in the world, but the public school should not be endorsing or pushing religion on any of our students.
Yeah, it's all about representing people fairly. And I know they like to say, well, most of the people in this county or in this school are Christians. And that's probably true in certain parts of the country, but not all of them are. And all of these citizens of that area pay taxes. All of these citizens of that area should be represented fairly by those government entities, whether it's a school or a courthouse or whatever. It comes down, doesn't it, Dan, to taxation and representation and equality. Is that correct?
Yes, and we don't actually live under majority rule in this country.
Exactly.
We live under constitutional rule. And especially when it comes to the First Amendment, those freedoms that are spelled out in the First Amendment, no local community has the right to override freedom of the press or freedom of speech, let's say, or freedom of assembly or freedom of religion. You can't take a vote to decide those things. Those things are not up to majority vote, even if there were only one atheist in that area.
Exactly.
And it would be the same argument as saying, well, 99% of our county are white folk. So why should we put up with the few black folk that are here? I mean, you would see the problem with that, right?
Right,
say,
exactly.
Well, that's intolerant. That's rude. And yet when it comes to non-believers in their community, they don't see it as they want to convert us, and they want to be free to use the public schools as a vehicle to push their religion on what a lot of them think is a mission field. They think the school is a mission field that they need to go in and convert. They can do that, but not on the school grounds.
Exactly. Well, I want to take a call here, and he's been waiting a little while, and then we'll talk more about FFRF and the Clergy Project. But I want both of you to weigh in on this call because it's something he wants to talk with me about, but I'd like both of you guys to, and it makes me think of your book, Dan, The Life-Driven Purpose. But let's take a call from Ray, he, him, and see hello, Ray, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, Ray.
Take your phone because I was listening to the show.
thanks for waiting so long. Sorry we got involved in a conversation there, but you said you were living with a degenerative illness and would like to talk about how to live life to the fullest. Tell us about that, Dan, Ray.
Right. Well, I got diagnosed in February of the pandemic year, and they said I'd see the spring and maybe another spring after that. It's like if I'm lucky, which I'm trying real hard. So, it's just one of those things that, happens to people. It's not fair, but what the hell,
Well, how are you doing with
what you
it,
can
Ray?
do, really, God.
Yeah. What are you? How
I'm
are
real
you doing?
good. Yeah. Well, my speech has become a little slurred. I can't write. I can't drive anymore. It's taken away all the fun things in life to do. Like talking.
What's the illness that you have? Did you say it? What's
MSA? It's
MS,
multiple systems atrophy.
Gotcha. It's a
a
cousin
brain
to
tumor
ALS.
disease.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of like Parkinson's on steroids.
Well,
That's what that he
yeah, you know my story
to
and
me.
how that I've got the ALS and I've had to learn how to move forward in a positive way with that. But Genevieve, your thoughts on how to live life to the fullest? You've experienced not an illness yourself, but loss of your dad to something.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I want to say just I'm so sorry, Ray, because that sucks, and there's no way around that. And that's kind of the challenge too, is that it's so easy, especially with something that is degenerative and affects your life like this. It's so easy to just resign. So I'm really glad that you called to even ask this question, because I do think it is important. There's a lot of changes that you're going to have to make, and it's okay to be angry that you can't do these things that you like to do, but I think something that's always important is just to find a workaround and find, well, this is what time I've got left, this is what I can do, it's a puzzle. What are you going to do to that you can do that you'll enjoy, and so much of it really is just kind of dealing with the grief, and it's okay to be angry and not be positive all the time. I think sometimes I feel like there is almost this epidemic of forced positivity, where everybody thinks that like the goal to like the way to live a good life is to always be happy, and that's not true. Like sometimes positivity can be really toxic, and it's okay to curse the non-existent God and say, you know what, today I'm going to say fuck this and be really pissed because it's not fair, and that's just how it is. So I would just make sure that you're giving yourself grace to do that, and to not try too hard to to be okay. It's okay to not be okay. And within that, you gotta find new hobbies. I guess there's a lot of really amazing things in the world that you can do that maybe don't involve the things that you can't do anymore. And I think that it's never too late to learn and keep discovering and keep doing new things. But mostly, but gotta say, yeah, it's okay to be pissed and not be okay. And so don't force yourself to like, oh no, now I gotta pick up a hobby that doesn't involve me talking or driving. Like it's a no pressure situation on my end. What do you guys think?
Well, I do. Well, I took up. I've been doing bonsai all my life. It's like when I got introduced to that, and picking up new things. It's like I've learned more about with YouTube and stuff. I study more on YouTube than I ever did in school, and like I'm an aging hippie, so it's like it's no big deal. As far as I've adopted that lifestyle and stuck with that. As far as peace, love, and question authority. It's like and that seems to work pretty well in my life. I got to find gold and snorkeling on Virgin Islands. So how many people can say that?
Well, Dan, back in your preacher days, Dan, you would have told Ray you'd pray for him, and what are your words of
I-
wisdom to him at this point in your
I would
life?
have laid hands on him and anointed him with oil and prayed for Jesus to heal him. And if he was in that like 0.5% of people that actually did get better from the result of prayer, I would claim it was a success. And if he didn't, I would say, well, according to your faith, be it unto you. In other words,
Yeah,
it's
it's
your
your
fault.
fault.
But I can't imagine what you and Dave are facing with this degenerative disease thing. I mean, it must be this. I mean, if it was me, it would be like a horrible pit in the stomach. I mean, on the one hand, we all know we're not getting out of this alive. All of us know that, right? Even
Right,
from
right.
the beginning. But when you face it like close up like that, it must be, it must be a horrible feeling. And when we age, there's a lot of things we lose. I used to be a gymnast, and I love gymnastics, but there's no way I'm getting back up on the rings or the high bar anymore, or on the tumbling mat. I
Right.
wish
I'm in a carpenter.
Oh, you were a carpenter? Yeah.
So there's things that we lose.
Yeah, I
we
was,
just can't do. You and Jesus, huh?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm
Well, I'm
reminded
glad that
of
you lost Jesus.
Bona Ahmed is a woman who spoke at our convention. Her husband, Avijit Roy, they're Bangladeshi born. He was murdered. He was killed with machetes. He was hacked to death in Bangladesh because
Oh,
he's an
my God.
atheist. He's an atheist, and he was a liberal.
Yeah.
She was supposed to die too. She was also hacked, and they thought she was dead, and she survived. And
Mm.
she doesn't remember it, but there's pictures of it, and there's this whole horrible thing that happened. And in fact, Annie Laurie was able to feel these machete scars on her scalp, and she's lost a thumb. And I mean, it's just
Wow.
And then Bona gave a TED talk last year where she asked the question, when horrible things like this happen, people ask, why me? But I want to ask, why not me? Am I so special that bad things are not supposed to happen to me? They happen to other people, but not to me. And Bona has got this great positive attitude, even though she's suffered so much. She says,
Mhm.
why not me? This is life. And this is the bargain we've all struck by being born in the first place.
Well, I think that attitude is important, and
Right.
I've said that myself to people when they say, were you angry that you got ALS? And I've said the very same thing. Why would I think that I'm that special that I wouldn't? Because there's a certain number of people every year that do statistically. And if we adopt the other attitude, like I should never have gotten this, like you, Ray, if you had the attitude of,
Yeah.
it's not fair that I got this degenerative illness, that's going to only lead to anger and resentment and frustration. And that will just do more
Exactly.
damage. That'll do more damage to you than the actual disease, in my opinion. So I hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
Ray. It's tough to lose the ability to do things. That's the thing I struggle with. I'm gonna, right now I can still drive. I'm losing the ability to feed myself with my hands, and losing the ability to dress
Yeah.
myself, and needing help with more and more things. But the adjustment is just the mental challenge, isn't it? And being able to accept it. Wouldn't you say, Ray?
Right. Well, I look at it, I'm like more like a pinball and arcade than, what I used to do. I used to, set trusses and stuff on roofs that, lasting, and it's like I can't even, go over the ladder anymore. I go everywhere with the walker,
Mm-hmm.
like, whoa, what did happen here? It'd be so easy to get mad, but, what good does that do? It's like, you, like you say, like I said, everybody says that's, the only thing that I'm looking forward to is, getting, I'm going to be composted. I'm not going to be cremated or buried in the ground. It's like, I told my brother that'd be a great way to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like it, it's I had to think about what I was doing as far as, like, I'd been saving all this stuff, to make art and stuff in the garage, and I got 20 years of stuff hanging out in the garage, and I can't even do any of it. What I can do, I do, but
Yeah.
I have fun doing it.
Well, I'm really sorry you're dealing with that, brother. Where do you live, Ray? Where are you from, if you don't mind telling me? Or you might, if you don't want
I'm
to tell
in
it.
Michigan.
Oh, okay. I'm just thinking next year I'm hoping to do some traveling. I'm speaking at some conferences and hoping to do some traveling with my book tour, and hope maybe we can meet up somewhere. That'd be great. Hug your neck.
Oh yeah, that'd be wonderful.
Well, Ray, you try
it's
to.
always fun to
Yeah, you try to
it's
stay
been great,
positive,
talking with you and stuff.
yeah, thanks for calling in, Ray. You hang in there, man. I know it's tough. We don't have any trite
Yeah.
things to say, but
Well,
it's tough. It's tough, and just do the best you can, man.
Well, life in general stuff, it's like trying to keep the hills and valleys,
Mm-hmm.
When I I'm an alcoholic, so I was like 25 years ago, I was like, they had between that and then the changeover day, and I was like, AA is a whole nother operation, but
Yeah,
I learned that the disease, alcohol disease, was ongoing, and I learned more about what the disease was, the percentage of people that get well out of AA and stuff like that, and all that stuff. So,
well, man, thanks for calling in. Keep up with my stuff, follow along, and I'll be, if I'm in the area, I'll be announcing. I know there's a group in Grand Rapids that wants to bring me in to do a talk, so maybe I'll get up in that neck of the woods. And I've got a conference in Sarnia, Canada, right across the border from Detroit. I don't know how far from that you are, but
okay.
maybe we can connect. That'd be
Sarnia's,
great.
Not that far.
I'm going to be there too.
That's right, Dan. You're speaking at that one too. You can meet Dan and me both. That'd be great, wouldn't it?
I think there's that big bridge that goes
that'd be fun.
Over into Sarnia.
It's in August, I believe. Dan,
Yeah.
Is that the last? Keep watch on my channel, and I'll be announcing it and the dates, and maybe you can come to that. That'd be awesome.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, fun. Ray. Thanks for the call, brother.
Right.
You hang in there.
Well,
man.
you guys have a good one. It's been I'll keep your head up and plug away. This is what we all got to do.
That's all we can do. Thank you, Ray.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Tame you.
Well,
bye.
Ray got to be on the Dave Warnock show, so that's something to say about life, isn't it?
See, yeah, there's all kinds of things you can do, and that'd be great. You and Annie Laurie are both speaking at that conference, aren't you, Dan?
We are, yeah. He just changed the date, so
yeah, I think he put it's settled in August, I believe.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see you then. So I mentioned that book, The Life-Driven Purpose. You made a flip on that from Rick Warren's The Purpose-Driven Life.
You caught that.
Yeah, I caught that. It wasn't too subtle for us Christians anyway. Well, tell us what that book was about.
I like how you said you called Ray brother. That's cool.
Yeah, it's an old habit, man.
It's like it brings me back to ministry days. We call everybody brother or sister. Yeah. So life-driven purpose is flipping Rick Warren on his head, because Rick Warren thinks that we all live underneath some hierarchy where there's purpose that is distributed from above.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're in an army, what are my marching orders?
Right.
If you're a slave, what are my tasks for today? Please tell me what I should do. And then when you get your orders, you do it, right? And then you've been a good servant. And even the Bible says someday Jesus will say you've been a good, faithful servant. So I think that if your purpose comes from outside of yourself, then you don't have any purpose of your own. You are somebody, you're a slave or a puppet to somebody else. And that's what Rick is selling. He's selling this kind of, religious purpose above us. I think we should do with purpose what the United States did with the Constitution. Instead of having a sovereign lord and a monarch, it was flipped upside down, and it's we the people. And instead of being a top-down system, it's a bottom-up system. So that's why I call it life-driven purpose. purpose comes from solving problems. I think as long as there are problems to solve, you got purpose in life. And so, if we went to heaven, there would be no more problems to solve. Heaven would be ultimate purposelessness. There would be nothing to solve,
Right.
nothing to do. So find a problem to solve, find a task to that you can work on. It can be anything. You pick it. It could be fighting a certain disease, or it could be fighting inequality, or climate change, or natural disasters, or poverty, or women's rights. Just find something that really, animal right, whatever. Find something that you can put your life on and try to help solve that problem in this world. Then you have, you don't have a purpose of life, because I think having a purpose of life cheapens it. But what you have is purpose in life. And as long as there's problems to solve, there's plenty of purpose in our lives.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Someone in the chat said they just downloaded the book on Audible. So there you go, Dan. You just got another
Really?
reader. Yeah.
And they can hear me reading it too.
Oh, wow. Well, no. And you've written so many books. What are the other titles that you've got there, Dan?
So there's one called Mere Morality, and some people will get that joke. Some won't. Maybe
Mere
Genevieve.
Christianity.
Maybe Genevieve doesn't know about
C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
Genevieve?
I know C.S. Lewis. Every time I talk to a friend about how I'm an atheist, they say, well, so is C.S. Lewis. You got to read him. I can't say that I'm familiar with his work outside of the wardrobe, though.
Well, he wrote a very popular book called Mere Christianity, in which he was trying, I don't think he succeeded, but he was trying to take all of Christianity and strip off the outer layers of the onion, all the non-essential stuff, to try to find out what is the core that all Christians believe and follow, and what is the mere Christianity, basically. So what C.S. Lewis did with Christianity, and you can judge whether he succeeded or not, I tried to do with morality. What is the basic essence of morality? And basically, morality is living and acting with the intention of minimizing harm. If that's how you are, if you are acting with that intention of having less overall harm in the world, then you are a good and moral person. That doesn't mean you can get rid of all harm. And it doesn't mean it doesn't go beyond that. I think a person who is simply sitting at home watching TV and not harming anybody can be called a moral person. The extras that are outside of mere morality are things like compassion and sacrifice and giving and caring and charity and all those things. And those things should not be demanded of anybody, because if they were demanded, they would not be praiseworthy. We praise people who do charitable, gracious acts precisely because they don't have to. So, but I do think if you want to be moral, you do have to at least take that minimal harm principle and live your life trying to minimize as much harm as you can. So what is harm? That's a big question. How do you define what harm is? And how do you know what you should do? And so what I do in Mere Morality, I have, you ever seen those old cartoons with, I think Homer Simpson did it too. There's a devil on one shoulder and there's an angel on the other, and the person's going, what should I do? Should I do this or that? You've seen that kind of simplified. So I suggest replacing those cartoons with instinct on one side, which is what we were born with. And many of us are just instinctively, naturally altruistic. And law on the other, which is society speaking to us, which is a good guide. Instinct and law can be good guides that you would want to consult to get through life. They don't necessarily guarantee what you should do. And in the middle, the head is reason. Reason is thinking it through. Reason is deciding when maybe you should break the law in order to minimize harm, or when maybe you should ignore your instincts because they evolved in an environment that's a lot different from the environment we have now. So anyway, that's an oversimplified picture of what my book's about. Get
that book. It sounds great. I haven't read that one, Dan. Super Chat Taram06. Thank you, everyone. He says, everyone buy a Dave mug. Your cup will never runneth over. Support Dave, Genevieve, and Dan. It sounds like, hey, I want to get this call. I want us to talk to Chad. Dan, you've done, if I'm correct, Dan, you've maybe done more debates than any other atheist still alive right now. Is that at one point that was true, correct?
I think it is true, and it might be ever.
Yeah.
I'm only counting actual physical public debates that are formal with a moderator and that whole thing. I've done 137 of those in the last since 1985.
And you won them all, if I'm correct.
I won every single one. Well, actually, if you look at the debates that were actually judged,
right,
I actually did win those.
Really?
Because sometimes I say on a scale of 1 to 10 before you enter the debate, and then when you leave the debate, what's your opinion on 1 to 10? And the times that has been done, it was only 2 or 3 times. The delta, the move was more in my direction than in my opponent. So I think that counts as winning. But in Oxford, it was really fun to go to Oxford in England and do this debate in the Oxford Union, and where where parliamentary procedure and all that stuff. We had to wear tuxedos and bow ties, and we toasted the Queen and all that stuff. And it was a 3-on-3 debate. And after the debate was over, the head of the Oxford Union, this young student, got up and said, "Now we will vote with our feet." I can't put a British accent on it, but we will vote with our feet. Those who are in support of the proposition will exit through this door. The proposition was, this house believes in God.
Oh, wow.
And those who are in support of the opposition will exit through this door. So 144 people went through the proposition door saying, yes, there's a God. But 162 went through our door.
You won.
So,
Yeah.
So by a vote of Oxford Union, there is no God.
That should settle it. So I want to talk to Chad, and I want to get both of you guys to weigh in on this. I think Chad is called before, if it's the right one. Chad, him in Michigan sees common ground that Christians and non-believers have against fundamentalists. And let's see. Hello, Chad. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. How you guys doing tonight?
Hey, Chad. Good to talk to you. You're on with Genevieve and Dan. So tell us your proposition here.
So what I was thinking about is the concept of the misconceptions, what I would say, with religion and Christianity. Actually, I think that the main thing is that Christianity and religion are not the same thing. I think they're two completely different things. So I would say true Christianity would be similar in what the topic of freedom of religion is promoting. So I would say that would be common ground that I would have with an atheist, that I take a strong stand against freedom of religion. So I think that there's common ground and similarity. So, and then kind of defining religion as being people who are self-righteous, judgmental, they show favoritism and their hypocrisy. So they say one thing and do another thing. That's kind of how I define religion. And I would be opposed to that. Versus what I would say Christianity would be following Jesus, having a biblical worldview, and trying to live out what you say you believe. So there's consistency. If I say I believe one thing, I'm living out what I say I believe. So I would say that there's similarities between true Christianity and breaking away from religion, that they're not the same thing, but it seems as though they get lumped together as though they are the same thing.
Genevieve, Dan, thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I would just say it kind of sounds like you're putting this idea of true Christianity on this pedestal that I don't necessarily think is merited, because I think for like the premise of your argument, you're kind of redefining what religion is as, oh, religion is just this bad thing, but true Christians, like, we want the same thing you do. But and I do have progressive Christian friends who have like deconstructed from evangelical fundamentalism, and we talk, and there's a lot we agree with. And I'm sorry if my cat gets in the way right now, excuse me. But I can say the same of a bunch of Sikh that I know, and some leftist Muslims even. Like, I don't think that what you're describing is that unique. I think that every religion can have fundamentalism, but whether it's fundamentalist or progressive, it's still religious. It's still a religion. I don't quite understand why you would want to make that distinction, if not to just distance yourself from this aspect of Christianity that you're not a fan of. Thoughts?
So how would you guys then define religion? Like if you were to give a definition of a religion, what would you say would be the definition of religion?
Go, Dan.
Well, sociologists and philosophers all agree that there is no consensus on how to define the word religion. So, and William James, in his lectures, he even said that. And so when he was giving his lectures about the varieties of religious experience, he had to first say, I need to tell you what I mean by religion before I proceed, because there is no agreement on it. And he gave an interesting, he defined it as a feeling. But at the Freedom from Religion Foundation, we do, of course, Christianity is a religion. I mean, if it's not, they should not get the tax breaks for being a religious group, right, from the IRS. They are a religion. They are recognized as a religion. But we define a religion as a system of beliefs and or practices that have some connection to a transcendent realm to which you are responsible in some way. The transcendent realm means supernatural, which usually is a God. And in Christianity, of course, it's a God. And in Christianity, God is supernatural. So just by that definition, you can come up with your own. I remember when I was a preacher, I used to say exactly what you're saying, that Christianity is not a religion, because religion is man reaching up to God, but Jesus is God reaching down to man. And so religion is just rituals and practices.
It's not a religion, it's a relationship, right, Dan? Did you hear that one?
I preach that too. But it's a religion. I mean, it has a holy book. It has a structure to it. It has ecclesiastical authority. It has hymns. It has missionaries. It has buildings. It has all the things that religions have. And so it seems a little disingenuous to say that Christianity is not a religion. You could say, like what C.S. Lewis was trying to do, that there may be a mere Christianity in the core. And of course, nobody can agree how to define that. Most of us would say, well, it's the good stuff, in the Bible, that love your neighbor and doing those things. In which case, all religions have that. There is no religion that doesn't talk about peace or love. Like, surprise, surprise, our religion talks about love. Well, they all do, and as if that were something special. Atheists and agnostics, we talk about love and caring and being charitable. In fact, we are just as charitable, if not more charitable, than religious people or true Christians. So it shouldn't matter whether you're religious or not. What people should be judged by their actions, not by what label they put on themselves.
Right. Right. So when you said, now I would assume that you've read the Bible then, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So when it comes to like religious sects of like Pharisees or Sadducees, the ones who came against Jesus, and those were the ones I was referring to when you read scripture, where Jesus rebuked them and said, you are of your father, the devil. And so he's basically rebuking them and speaking to them rather harshly in scripture. So they would be, how would you, like, is he just then rebuking their sort of religion, you think? Or do you think he's rebuking religion in general? Or because that's what I equate to the religion. I guess maybe I equate it to like the Pharisees and Sadducees, or the different religious groups, and what they were trying to promote and what they were trying to do. So maybe it's just some terminology, and maybe the importance of defining terms might be important then.
The Christians would say that whoever wrote that passage, or Jesus even said it, but Christians would say that they had a false religion. Right. It isn't that they had religion and Christians don't. Christians had the true religion.
And I think we need to realize, if we're looking at the Jesus story, whether, like Dan said, whether what happened, what didn't, how real he was and who he was. If you're looking at just the biblical narrative about Jesus, we have to realize he didn't come in here thinking he was going to start a religion. That was done by Paul decades later. And it formed around other people's ideas about who Jesus was. Many people think a lot of the gospel narratives, he wasn't even calling himself divine. He was just going around preaching and doing what prophets did in that era, and he got himself killed by coming against Rome. But when people say, I do have a thought about what you said earlier. I've heard this so many times, I know Dan has too, that it's not about a religion, it's about a relationship. And I don't go to church anymore. I just follow Jesus, and I don't like all the religious stuff. I just want to love people like Jesus did. Well, if we're really looking at what he said, if you're looking at the Gospels of what was reported that he said some pretty horrendous things. And we can't just pick out the stuff where he said, let the little children come unto me and love your neighbor as yourself and all those little nice platitudes. He also said, if you don't leave your family, you're not worthy to follow me. Drop everything and follow me. What kind of a narcissistic person does it take to say those kinds of things if you just look at it on the surface? And he also said, many of you are going to be thrown and cast into the lake of fire where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. There's a lot of things that Jesus said that you're not going to put on a magnet and put on a refrigerator.
Right. You're not going to want to put it on a bumper sticker or something.
No, we forget those things.
Well, beat your slaves is one of them.
Yeah.
And there's a verse in Luke where Jesus said, if I can quote it correctly, there are some eunuchs that were born eunuchs, and there were some eunuchs who were made eunuchs, to work in a harem, let's say. But there are some eunuchs who made themselves into eunuchs for the kingdom of God. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it. So Jesus was encouraging some men to castrate themselves. I never heard that sermon preached from the pulpit.
Dan, it's remarkable how well you remember these Bible passages.
It's been a long time. But...
Well, I appreciate you sharing too your understand or your how you define that. It helped me to have a better clarity of where you're coming from. So I appreciate that.
You bet. Thanks for the call, Chad.
So yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for taking the call tonight.
Yeah. Bye now.
Okay. Bye.
Steve M., I see your super chat. Thank you so much for your support. Really means a lot. We appreciate it. Yeah, Dan, you were a preacher for how many years?
Well, if you count the amount of time between my first sermon and my last sermon, it was 19 years. Although I started preaching before I was ordained, before I actually worked in a church. So, but 19 years of preaching.
So I read the first book I read of yours was Godless, and that's pretty much your story of deconstruction and deconverting and waking up, if you will, and realizing you didn't believe anymore. How long was that process for you from the time you started having serious questions about what you were believing and to the time you came to the conclusion that, oh shit, this is not real?
Well, I would not have used profanity at the time, but
no,
as a good Christian. My story is almost as good as your story, Dave. By the way, you have a good book coming out. Dave is a really good writer. I mean, he makes it's vivid, it's colorful, it's emotional. It makes you feel like you're really there. So when the book comes out, everybody should buy 2 copies, one to keep and one to give to a friend.
One to leave in a motel room, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Next to the Gideon Bible.
Well, thank you, Dan. That's very kind.
It was a pleasure to read, and I identify with so much of your story because we went through the same kind of feelings. And although you were a little bit more honest than I would have been on a couple of those places, but I respect that.
Well, it may come back to bite me, but
no,
I
it won't.
felt like I really had to tell the whole story.
Yeah, I know it's great. Actually, I'm glad you did. But so toward the end of those 19 years, the last like 4 years or so, I didn't have doubts. I mean, all those years of preaching and singing, and I was a Christian songwriter and a traveling evangelist and a missionary to Mexico, and I was co-pastor of 3 different churches. And I believed Jesus was coming soon. So I was sincere. I thought all ministers were sincere. And toward the end of that, around the age of 30, 29 or 30, let's say, I didn't have doubts, but I started having questions. And what started with me is that I started moving not from fundamentalism to atheism. I mean, maybe that's happened. I don't know if that's ever actually happened overnight.
Right.
But with me, it had to be a gradual process, most of which happened within Christianity. And as I started traveling around, and these churches were performing my musicals, and they're inviting me to come and be like this preacher slash guest composer singer.
You were writing children's musicals, correct?
Yeah, and adult music too. I had a whole bunch
okay.
of music
All
out.
of it. I see.
But yeah, but my big success was the 2 children's musicals with Man of Music. And so a lot of churches and schools, they would put them on in like a drama. And so,
Right.
they wanted the conductor to come, the composer to come to it. And so I got invited to not just extreme fundamentalist Bible believing churches who were performing it, but all sorts of churches were performing it, even moderate and even some liberal churches. So I started meeting dozens and dozens of pastors representing the cross section of Christianity and realizing that there is no one Christianity. There's all these different little groups of them. There may be as many Christianities as there are Christians. Each one kind of makes their own theology. And I can't tell the whole story now, but basically I kind of gradually moved within Christianity from being so conservative extreme to being a little more tolerant and liberal and more loving, more moderate. My sermons were less about hell and judgment and more about love and how do you live your Christian life kind of thing. And then eventually I kept moving across that spectrum to where I became one of these like liberal Christians, where I was even wondering, well, what is, what is God and all of that. And I finally popped all the way out. 1983. What I like to say is I dumped out all the bath water and I found out, hey, there's no baby there. Or like C.S. Lewis pulling back the onion. Hey, there's no center there. You just keep all the non-essential stuff. And so I became a baby atheist that summer of 83. And I kept preaching for 4 or 5 months. That was horrible.
Yeah.
I had to get up as a knowing hypocrite. I didn't know how to like stop on a dime. And I finally in December, I decided that's enough. I'm going to stop. But you can read the whole story and especially some of the early theological questions that I had and biblical questions. You can read that in my book, Godless.
Yeah, get that book too.
Yeah, that reminds me a bit of, something that I kind of wanted to say to Chad when he called and talked about, true Christianity is this. And the truth is that every single person who considers themselves a Christian wholeheartedly believes that what they are practicing is true Christianity.
Of course.
Otherwise, why would you?
They wouldn't be practicing it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody ever says, I was practicing the false Christianity.
It's like, I know what the true Christianity is, but I just don't like that. So I'm just going to go over here. That doesn't happen. It really doesn't.
Dan, what show, refresh my memory and tell the viewers, your connection with FFRF and Annie Laurie, that happened on an interview, on a talk show, correct?
Yes.
Who was that?
So in 1984, I finally sent my letter out to everybody in January. I heard about the Freedom from Religion Foundation a few months later and became a member, wrote an article for the paper. And Oprah Winfrey had a TV show just before she became a big national star. She had her second TV show. Her first TV show was in Baltimore. Then she moved to Chicago for a show called AM Chicago. I think I had heard her name, but she invited Ann Gaylor and Annie Laurie Gaylor to be a guest on her show in Chicago to talk about atheism because they were on her show in Baltimore. And Oprah had used a videotape of her interview with Ann and Annie Laurie to try to get the job in Chicago, and that she got the job and she thought, well, I owe a lot to them. So,
oh, wow.
So she said, let's do a show about atheism. And do you know any other atheists with a good story? And they said, well, we just got this letter from this preacher in California who's now an atheist. And she said, that would be good. So they flew me out to Chicago. And not only was that the first time I had ever knowingly met any other atheists and talked with them in my whole life, it was also the first time I had spoken about any of this stuff publicly. And here it was on TV, live TV. I'd been a preacher 9 months before. And, I thought, well, what happens to preachers when they leave? Do they just go out to pasture or what? And
they become insurance agents like me.
Yeah, well, yeah. Or they teach philosophy, some of them, or they, insurance is a good fit, isn't it?
Yes.
I went into computer programming for a while.
That's right.
But that was also the first time I had spoken before a hostile audience. And if you watch that show, you can find it online. when you're a pastor, you're up in the pulpit and you're preaching, everybody's amen, and they're there.
Oh,
'cause,
yeah.
It's just this
Oh, yeah.
wonderful thing. And I had never before spoken before an audience who hated me and who were yelling back, and they were calling Annie Laurie a witch because she was a feminist atheist. And I'd never felt that before. And I loved it. I thought, wow, I'm finally saying something that's making a difference. Because when you preach
Oh my God.
when you preach at a church, are you really making any dent, or you know what I mean? But on that show, you can see that I was kind of nervous the first few minutes. Annie Laurie and Ann, we had just met that day.
Right.
In fact, Annie Laurie and I eventually got married. So you can see the day we met on that show.
Yeah.
And
in
you
public.
can kind of see us
I love
With
it.
Oprah.
with the Oprah show. Yeah.
That's how everybody meets, Dan. That's pretty much how it's done.
And
Oh,
later
gosh.
we showed, we have a daughter, Sabrina. She calls herself Glenn now. We later showed her that show, and she was laughing that this is the day your parents met on Oprah
Right.
show.
Right.
And you can see us kind of checking each other out, just kind of. And then it was a year later that we got together, and we were married in 1987. But
Yeah.
but that was really a cool experience. And then I came to Wisconsin, of course, for FFRF, but also for Annie Laurie to come to move here. And so I've been here ever since.
Well, Asexual Atheist, thank you for your super chat. Appreciate your support. And also John Fapiano, thank you so much, brother. I love that story, Dan, about you and Annie Laurie meeting and how that all came to pass, and how you got involved with FFRF. So I want to talk a little bit about the Clergy Project. We're going to get a call. By the way, our Genevieve Ethan's power went out, and
Yeah, I saw that. I was just about to make an announcement.
we can't get any more calls. So
Sorry, guys.
no more calls. But
Wait,
sorry about
let's
that.
Put your hand on the screen and
Yeah,
pray.
stretch your hand. Dan, do you still have it? Come on, brother.
Well, yeah, but I don't do it in public anymore. I can still speak in tongues, actually, and I
can too. I can too.
And I go back into that mode. That's wonderful. It feels like there's this, but it's embarrassing. I don't want to do it in front.
Let's have a tongues off. Come on, let's do it.
I've never done it for Annie Laurie. She's always wanted me to.
Oh, I'll do it for her when I see her next.
Well, okay.
I'm not ashamed.
Right.
I'll do it when we're at the conference. Tell her Dave's going to speak in tongues for her.
Oh, gosh.
All right.
But Dan, we were going to have a call tonight from Adam Mann. Tell us who that is.
Yeah. Well, so Adam Mann is a pseudonym.
Mm-hmm.
He made up Adam, and Man, which is the same thing. His real name is Carter Warden, but for years we didn't know his real name.
Right.
He was one of the early members of the Clergy Project, which started in 2011, March of 2011, and he was a pastor of a conservative Tennessee church, and he was an atheist, but he was stuck. He couldn't get out of the ministry, and it took years for him to get out of the ministry. And part of it was because, before the Affordable Care Act, he needed the health insurance because his wife was disabled, and so he loved his family too much to just leave. And he couldn't think of any other job he could do that would pay well enough. And he almost was going to leave to become a car salesman, but then he discovered that there was no health insurance with it, so he couldn't. So he was in the pulpit, and his church didn't know that he was one of the main admins on the Clergy Project's page that we had. What do you call the page? The secret page.
The forum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so we all knew about Adam, and there was another guy in North Carolina. Oh my goodness, I should remember his name. He was also very helpful. And about 2/3 of us were out of the ministry, but about a fourth of them were still in the pulpit, including Adam Mann. And sometimes he would finish preaching on Sunday morning, he'd go into his church office and shut the door, and he would email us, "You can't believe the crap that I had to say today from the pulpit. I just can't wait to get out of here."
Oh, yeah.
And, it was really fun. Finally, he finally got a job at the university. He was able to leave and come out of the closet. And he came out of the closet at our convention in Pittsburgh.
Right.
Was that 4 years ago?
Yeah.
It was 4 years ago.
I think so.
and nobody knew who he was. And then so we were able to introduce him. So Adam Mann, if you're out there, come on up. We want to know who you are. He came up, and Daniel Dennett was there, the philosopher, and Linda Lascola,
Right.
who were a big part of founding the Clergy Project. And so we got to hug Carter Warden. We got to meet his real name, and he was finally out of the pulpit. And we did some of his songs. He rewrote some of the lyrics to the hymns. That was a lot of fun. So you've had him on your show, haven't you?
Not yet, no. But Carter and I have become good friends. Actually, I've been to speak at the college there. I know you have. And I was chatting with him earlier today, and he was going to call in, but he said he's babysitting, but he was going to call in and it was going to call as Adam Mann and ask you how can I get out of the pulpit?
Well, he's probably watching now, right?
He probably is.
So hi,
hey Carter. Bobby Jacobson, thank you for your super chat, and Sun Red, thank you so much, you guys. But yeah, you were instrumental in launching the Clergy Project along with Daniel Dennett, and I believe who gave
Richard Dawkins too.
Richard Dawkins had a hand in that, yeah. And so as I wrote about this in my book, and you probably don't remember the phone call, but I talked about it in my book. As I was deconstructing my faith, and I was coming to the place where really struggling with what do I believe, what do I not believe, who do I talk to? I had no one, in that world, Dan. Yeah. We live in such a bubble that everyone around us believes the way we believe. They think the way we think. We all talk the same. There's just no one in your world you can go to process these questions. And I literally Googled pastors who've lost their faith or something like that. And of course you come up, and your phone number's on there. I think all this is correct. This is how I remember it. So this is how I wrote about it. Whether it's true or not, who knows? But I called you and left a message. And you called back, and we had this conversation about me losing my faith. And you were the first person I was able to talk to about that. Wow. That I felt like truly understood. And it was absolutely liberating. It was just like, I'm not crazy. I'm not alone. This has happened to others.
Unless we're both crazy, maybe.
Well, that's possible. There's a non-zero chance of that. But if we are, there's a lot more of us joining that club. Let's just say that. But you probably don't remember that conversation, but it was huge for me. And then I became a member of the Clergy Project and became a board member, and we were on board meetings together for a while.
Yeah, that's right.
If you remember that. It was
that's what the Clergy Project is for, is that connection.
Yeah, exactly that. And I've had the chance to meet probably 2 or 3 dozen Clergy Project members in person over the last 3 or 4 years in different places. There are several of us in the Nashville area where I was living at the time I came into all this, and have met many wonderful people. My best friend who wrote the foreword to my book, Cass Midgley, he and I were on a Clergy Project committee meeting one night on video, and everybody was telling, where are you from, and I'm in Nashville, and he said, I'm in Murfreesboro, and we said, oh my God, that's 30 minutes apart. We gotta get coffee. And we did, like that next week, and we became best friends, and that was through the Clergy Project.
Wow. Well, that was the whole point of it. It was 3 different strands that came together at the right time. Richard Dawkins had talked about maybe doing something for clergy who are atheists in the pulpit. How do we help them? Mm-hmm. And Daniel Dennett and Linda Lascola had done that study about preachers who don't believe. And before they did that study, they had to find those preachers. How do you find them? If somebody's in the pulpit and they're an atheist, how do you find them? So Linda called me, and I had heard from people like you, because they call and they talk, and some of them are still in the pulpit. And so I contacted some of them and said, do you mind if I give your name? It'll be anonymous. So she was able to actually fly and meet these people and to do that first study of theirs with Daniel Dennett, the philosopher. And then for years, I had known a whole bunch of former clergy. In fact, we had a panel of former clergy in 1985 in Minneapolis with 4 of us who were out of the ministry now. So in my address book, I had a whole bunch of names. So that was sort of the core of the beginning of the Clergy Project, was those names.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I remember Carter doing, when he was Adam Mann, he did that CBS interview where he was, his face was blocked out and his voice
changed his voice so
that you
can't recognize him.
Yeah. And he was terrified of becoming known. And talk about that, Dan, for a minute, if you would. What it's like, because you've met many of the Clergy Project people, more than me, and you started the organization, but the fear of being found out and what the heartbreak, if you will, that we as humans just can't be who we are and be honest about it because of structures that are developed or places that we are in our lives. What's some common things you've heard and seen with that?
Well, with clergy, of course, it's the same problem for anybody who's leaving their faith, right? Their family and their community and that. But with clergy, it's another level up, because not only is it your livelihood, and if you leave, you're leaving your job. You have to find another job. But it's also, clergy are accustomed to having a level of respect in their community.
Yeah.
You are the clergy person. And I know that when I went to people's homes to visit, they would hide all their secular records and put their Christian records up front, to make, because the minister's in the house, they want, that kind of.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't really relish that kind of attention, but I saw that it came with the job. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
You're a man of God. You're a clergy.
Pastor Dave. No, don't call me pastor. Just call me Dave.
Yeah, I know. So, but even then, and then we get a lot of recognition and a lot of breaks, and we're members of the clergy, and we even get special housing allowance breaks that no one else gets, because. So if you're going to give up all of that, you got to be really sure of what you're doing, and that's really tough. Not only that, but what if the spouse is staying in the faith?
As mine did. Yeah.
And in the Clergy Project, that's a big deal. And they want to talk about that. How can we find secular marriage counseling? Some of them are depressed. Some of them need counseling for depression. All sorts of problems that can have. Some of them, in some cases, they were thrown out on the street and they changed the locks and they were not allowed to even come back. And they had to scramble. And one of the Clergy Project men was flipping hamburgers for a few months.
Yeah.
After he had this divinity degree and he was respected, he had to make a living. So
that's why many of them stay in the pulpit they get a lot of criticism for it. And I understand what people are saying. How could you get up every Sunday and preach what you think is a lie? But they're really stuck, because like Carter was, how do I make a living if I walk away from this? What do I do? I'm not trained for anything else. I'm not trained to make a living in the real world. Once I step out of this world, what do I do?
But it turns out that he's found a great fit there at the university.
Oh, it's perfect for him. He loves it.
Most of the skills that he was able to develop in the ministry, he's able to transport them. Well, he'll tell you that, he could still use some of that same leadership abilities. So.
But it's a great service. I'm still in touch with the Clergy Project and talk to them regularly, and have really made some incredibly good friends through there, met some wonderful people. They're still doing great work, and we're on the right side of history here. We're on the right side of this thing, and it's moving the direction of more and more clergy, as well as non-clergy, moving away from faith and realizing that it's like, Genevieve, you remind us, your whole entry into this atheist activism, if you will, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't come from that background, but you saw what was happening.
Yeah. I personally had no skin in the game. Both of my parents were essentially anti-theists. I grew up never going to church and understanding that, Christians are those people that shove your religion down your throat. That was kind of what I grew up with, this idea. And then, of course, later on, when I was, a teenager, I had friends that were Christians. And so my way of rebelling was just telling my parents, oh, not all Christians are bad, mom and dad. But, it really wasn't until about 6 or 7 years ago, I moved from San Francisco to North Carolina, about an hour and a half from where you are now, Dave. And that was a big culture shock. I remember I had seen Jesus Camp before. I didn't know people who lived through that or lived remotely anything like that. And then, of course, I've always been really politically active, and so I moved early 2016, and we can all remember what that was like.
Yeah.
And so I noticed that this like radicalization of the right that was happening nationally, I could see that this could not be, more intertwined with evangelical Christianity if we, tried harder to get them tied up. It was so crazy to go from seeing churches that might have signs that say, Jesus loves you, repent, to I noticed that some of the signs got a little more Haiti, I would say, a little more hell driven, and then there's a Trump sign right next to it. And I thought I was just in crazy land. I couldn't wrap my head around this being the reality in which we're living. And then, of course, I started having conversations with people that I thought I knew really well, and then learned that, you don't believe in evolution? Oh, you did vote for Donald Trump? And I just, couple that with working in politics and part of my job being to, reach out to these people. I understood that I couldn't do my job unless I understood white American evangelical Christianity. And
Right.
I don't think that we can really get out of this polarizing, radical reality in which we're all unfortunately existing without addressing the evangelical elephant in the room. It's,
Dan, you said that your membership and donations have gone up since Trump, as people have realized what people like him are capable of in this country. What do you see in terms of the danger of Christian nationalism and those kind of things rising like it apparently has, or has it just been there all along?
We're almost 36,000 members now, which is really healthy. When I joined, it was like 1,800 members.
Wow.
By the way, the Clergy Project is over
1,100.
Over 1,100. Yeah. So that's pretty amazing. So I'm an optimist, and optimism is just something you can choose to be. It doesn't mean it's going to make any difference, but I think if you're working for change and working for progress to correct problems, that you have to have some kind of hope and optimism in the future. Demographically, we are winning this battle.
Yes.
Fewer and fewer people are religious now, especially among the young people.
Yeah.
The fight for gay rights is still going on, but look at how much progress has been made in the last 20 years. And it used to be women's rights back in the past. We made so many progress. If you look back at history, the last century and a half or so, all of these big fights that religion has had with secular society, they have lost. They've lost.
Good point.
They lost on evolution in the schools. They lost on prayer in the schools. They lost on birth control. They lost on abortion rights. They're still fighting on it now, but they've lost on gay rights. They're losing and losing and losing. They're always losing because who wants to give up progress? We have progress and we enjoy it. Who would want to go back and take the vote away from women? That's just a little more than a century ago that women could not even participate in their own democracy, which just seems crazy. But now, would anyone even suggest, maybe a couple of nuts, but that we would want to undo the progress? So society is progressing, and the religious right hates it. So their numbers are getting smaller, although I think, they used to have all this privilege, and they hate the fact that they don't have the privilege they used to have in the past, white evangelicals especially. And so that makes them more angry. And I think in the short term, in the next decade or so, even more dangerous, because they're dying and they know they're dying. and maybe like a wild animal out in the
Oh,
forest.
yeah. A wounded animal. Yeah. Snapping at everything.
It
Right.
wants to take everything down it can.
Yeah.
So they're really dangerous now, and we need to even be more vigilant, even though we're winning and winning and winning. And do we want to wait for another century till it just naturally happens, or do we want to keep the guard up? So that's what FFRF is doing. We're trying to keep that guard up to make sure that we can protect the progress that we have already made.
Yeah. And I think the numbers are dwindling. Their numbers, as you said, are dwindling. And that's a great point, Dan. We've made incredible progress. It's easy to get discouraged at the things we see now, but the numbers are smaller. Maybe they're just louder. And I think Trump gave a megaphone to these people to say things they wouldn't. They're saying the quiet things out loud now. And that's maybe the difference than it was before the Trump cult became a thing. But you're right. They're losing every major battle. Even, Andrew was on just shortly after the horrible Texas abortion law, and he was so outraged. It was just like, good God. But even with that, it looks like the courts are, I don't think they're going to get that through. But
that's the danger. The danger is the court that Trump was able to pack. They did pack that court.
Yeah, they did.
They're opposed to packing the court, but that's exactly what they did. And it's a lifetime appointment. And one of the guests on Freethought Matters a few weeks ago has written a book called Pack the Court. He thinks we should stop pretending that we've not packing the courts, because it's politically packed ever since the beginning.
Of course.
And those of us who care about progress should be pushing to, even if you don't want to use that phrase because it sounds political.
Just add more justices, right? Just add them.
Well, yeah, you can do that. And that's one of the things Andrew's advocating too.
Yeah.
Add more. There's nothing in the Constitution that limits the number.
No.
But we should stop pretending like the court is non-political. Which in all the nomination hearings, they all get up and they say, well, I'm just going to judge it on the facts. Everybody knows, and they know that they're in there with an agenda. They all know that, and we all know that. And public confidence in the Supreme Court has gone way down because we realize that it's just a political game. They're not just these blindfolded arbiters of the law in most cases. Maybe there's some cases where they don't care. But so they're pretty young, a lot of them. And they're going to be on that court for a long time. And even when demographically, they no longer represent the country, even though they were nominated by somebody who supposedly did, who got fewer votes than his opponent. They're still going to have as you say, a megaphone influence, an exaggerated influence in the future. And we need to fight against that. And we're optimistic and discouraged at the same time, because now there are some cases that maybe we would not take to this court because we know how this court would rule.
Exactly. So you're being more judicious, to use the judicial word. Well, I don't want to run short on time. We've got a sharp cutoff at 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern. But Dan, we're going to have your links in the comments or in the show notes if we don't already. Obviously FFRF.org, but how can folks find your other work, like your books and things, your website? How can folks find you and support you, Dan?
So at FFRF.org, there's a getting acquainted page. All of our staff have their bios, and my bio's on there, and it shows all the list of books and debate topics and song titles and all that stuff that if you want to find about. Or you can always go online and search for authors, books of authors. And then don't forget clergyproject.org. A lot of them, including you, have writings that are available. Many of them have books. We just lost Stephen Newell. He was one of the members. He was a former priest who wrote a book called Out of God's Closet. You can read that book. You can read a lot of books and writings by former clergy as well. So, and then you're welcome to become a member after you support David Warnock's thing with your $200 donation. Then you're welcome to become a member of FFRF.
Well, I highly applaud the work you guys do. I've seen in the comments several people have said they're members, and I love the work you guys do. There's nothing, in my opinion, more important that's going on. And so keep it up. Get some young people in there, Dan, because you're getting old, bro. So you're not going to live forever. So
Well, none
But
of us are, but you're right. Yeah.
But I love your books. I was out. Bevan and I were out visiting a friend in Seattle a month or two ago. Her husband passed from ALS, and we went out to speak at his memorial service. And I was in her living room, and she had 3 or 4 of your books on her shelves. And I just thought, man, I love this. Your influence is everywhere, Dan. And so I can't. I mean, I've already shared how much of an influence you had in my own story. And it's just been, you've done so much good for so many people, Dan, and I'm proud to know you.
You know what books are for us atheists? They're an afterlife.
Yeah, they stay on. So keep writing. What's your next book coming out?
Well, it's not written yet. It's called The End of Worship. And it's so far it's been 4 years of project. I got to find time to do it. But you know how Sam Harris wrote a book called The End of Faith. Well, this is called The End of Worship, a totally different thing. Belief and worship are 2 different things.
Genevieve, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'm thinking right now is that, if a life-driven purpose is counted by how much change you make or how much you dedicate yourself to an important cause that's outside of yourself, then I would say you have had more purpose in your life than I could ever dream of. So I'm just so happy to have you here and to chat with you. Your life story is just outrageously fascinating, and the work that you're doing is so incredible and important. So thank you so much.
And this is part of it. This is really fun being on this show.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on, Dan. And I loved the time I had in Madison a couple years ago, and hopefully I'll get up there next year. We're going to do a book tour. I'm going to do some speaking, so I'll come on and promote my book.
Stay alive.
I'm trying to.
See you
Love
better.
you, Dan. Love you, Dan. Thanks everyone for tuning in this week. And that's our show. Bye-bye.